Welcome to another deep dive.
Mm.
It's got some really captivating material this time around, late 19th century Korea.
Oh, a fascinating period.
Lots of palace intrigue and shifting alliances.
Yeah.
And Korea's really trying to find its footing in a world that's changing incredibly rapidly around them.
It is. It's, we're looking at Korea under the Joseon dynasty, also known as the Lee dynasty.
Okay.
And they had been in power for centuries,
Right.
primarily interacting with China and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But by the late 1800s, that carefully maintained world was about to be completely upended.
Yeah, think of it like this. Imagine your whole neighborhood's renovating, putting in fancy new additions, but you're trying to keep your house exactly the same.
Right.
That's kind of the tension that Korea is facing as the world industrializes and globalizes around them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break down some of the key players here.
Sure.
We got King Gojong, who ascends to the throne fairly young. So his father, the Daewon Gun, acts as regent.
And the Daewon Gun was very much a staunch isolationist.
Right.
He wanted to preserve Korea's traditions and keep foreign influence out.
Keep the foreigners out.
However, King Gojong's wife, Queen Min, and her faction had different ideas.
Oh.
They saw the need for some cautious modernization and engaging with the world, at least to a certain extent.
Right, so already you've got this internal clash between old ways and new ideas, even within the ruling family itself.
Exactly.
But then things get even more complicated when Japan enters the scene.
Now, this isn't the Japan of samurai and shoguns you might be picturing.
Right, this is a different Japan.
This is Japan. After the Meiji Restoration, they've rapidly industrialized, modernized their military.
Oh, wow.
And they're looking to assert themselves as a power in Asia.
So they're looking to make a statement.
Absolutely.
And they've got their eyes on Korea.
They do.
Strategically located, right, between Japan and China, almost like a bridge.
Yeah, very strategic.
And this is where the Gangwon Island incident comes in.
Right.
It seems like a relatively small naval skirmish in 1875.
Yeah.
But from what I've read, it had massive consequences.
Absolutely it did.
So what happened there?
Well, Japan essentially used this incident as a pretext.
Okay.
It was their chance to force Korea to sign what's called an unequal treaty.
Okay.
Basically, it opened up Korean ports to Japanese trade and gave Japan all sorts of special privileges, something that Western powers had done to Japan just a few decades earlier.
So using a minor event to push a bigger agenda, I mean, that's sadly a tactic we see throughout history, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Forced opening up.
Yeah.
And this had a ripple effect inside Korea too, didn't it?
For sure. Korean politics become even more polarized at this point.
Yeah.
You have the Sade Party, who want to maintain that traditional relationship with China, almost like a mentor-student relationship,
Right.
which is what being a tributary state meant.
Hmm.
Then you have the Independence Party, who are looking at Japan's modernization, thinking, well, we could do that too. We need to stand on our own 2 feet.
So you've got conservatives versus reformers, all while Japan is applying pressure.
Exactly.
Talk about a pressure cooker.
Mm.
And then boom, the MO incident in 1882.
This was a dramatic turn.
This one seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, basically you have a military mutiny fueled by, rumors and discontent within the army.
Okay.
And the Daewon Gun, even though he was officially out of power, saw this as his chance to exploit this chaos and try to regain control.
So he's using this unrest to stage a comeback.
Absolutely.
That's bold.
Yeah, he was a shrewd politician.
But Queen Min was no pushover. She barely escapes this violence, disguised as a commoner.
That's right.
She has to flee the palace. I mean, that's straight out of a movie.
Indeed, she was a very, very shrewd political operator.
Yeah.
Not only did she escape, but she then requested Chinese intervention to put down the rebellion.
Oh, okay.
Which they did.
So she uses her connections there
Exactly.
to get back in the game.
That's right. This further solidified China's influence over Korea, and in a way, checkmated the Daewongun's attempt to grab power.
So China steps in, Queen Min is back in the game, but the story doesn't end there.
No, it does not.
Now we have the Gapson coup of 1884,
Right.
and this time it's the Independence Party making a move.
It was a bold, albeit very short-lived attempt by the Independence Party, led by a very charismatic figure named Kim Ok-gyun.
Okay.
They wanted to modernize Korea quickly and forcefully.
Wow.
We're talking about establishing a postal service, abolishing slavery,
Wow.
things that would have radically transformed Korean society at that time.
Huge changes.
And they even secured Japanese backing.
Oh, wow.
Because they saw Japan as a model for this rapid change.
They saw what Japan had done.
Exactly.
Wow. So that's ambitious, hitting the fast forward button on Korea's development.
Absolutely.
But they had Japanese support. So what went wrong?
Well, they underestimated Queen Min.
Oh, she's always there.
Once again, she proves to be a master strategist.
Okay.
She calls upon China for help.
Of course she does.
And within days, Chinese troops crushed the coup.
Wow, so China again comes in
Yes.
at her request
Yes.
and puts down this coup.
Yes.
The Independence Party leaders are forced to flee for their lives.
They have to run.
It seems like every time one side makes a move, Queen Min is there to counter it.
She was very good.
Like she's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
She's always one step ahead.
But with China and Japan both intervening so forcefully, it's clear that Korea is really stuck in a precarious position.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's what the Tianjin Convention of 1885 really highlights.
Okay.
This treaty, which was negotiated between China and Japan without any Korean input, by the way, forced both countries to withdraw their troops from Korea.
Oh.
On the surface, it seems like a step back, a cooling off period, but
Right.
it really shows that Korea's fate was being decided by these larger powers.
They're caught in this tug of war
Exactly.
between these two big empires.
The Tianjin Convention might have created a temporary stalemate, but it also foreshadowed this growing rivalry between Japan and China.
Okay.
A rivalry that would have significant consequences for Korea in the years to come.
Yeah. We'll have to see what those are.
Yeah.
But first, we need to check back in with our coup leader, Kim Ok-gin.
Right, that's true.
Find out what happens to him after this daring, albeit failed attempt to revolutionize Korea.
Very interesting story.
Sounds like it. So we've got Korea caught between this rock and hard place with China and Japan vying for influence. But let's not forget about Kim Ok-gin.
Right, our ambitious coup leader.
Our coup leader, what becomes of him after this daring, albeit failed attempt to revolutionize Korea?
Well, Kim Ok-gin's story takes a rather tragic turn.
Okay.
After the Gapson coup, he's forced to flee to Japan for safety.
Right, he's got to get out of there.
He goes from, leading this coup to living essentially as a political refugee.
Wow, what a change.
Yeah, pretty dramatic shift in fortune. But even in exile, he doesn't give up on his vision for a modern, independent Korea.
I can imagine that just sitting quietly wasn't really his style.
Not at all.
So what does he do? Does he try to rally support for another attempt at reform?
He does. He continues to advocate for his cause,
Yep.
hoping to find backing for another push towards modernization.
Right.
But remember, Japan has to be careful here.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be seen as openly supporting someone who just caused so much chaos.
Right.
Especially with China watching their every move.
Yeah, so he becomes kind of a liability.
A bit too hot to handle.
Too hot to handle.
Yeah.
So how does his story end?
Well, while in exile in Shanghai,
Okay.
Kim Ok-gun is assassinated.
Oh.
And to add insult to injury, his body is transported back to Korea, where he's subjected to this gruesome public execution.
Wow. Talk about sending a message.
Absolutely.
It's a chilling reminder that in this era, political maneuvering wasn't just about winning or losing.
Right.
It was a matter of life and death.
Absolutely. Kim Ok-gun's assassination was meant to really squash any hopes of further reform,
Yeah.
especially anything that looked like it had foreign backing.
So even in death, he becomes a symbol,
Yeah,
almost like a warning to anyone who might dare to challenge the established order.
exactly.
It's a stark reminder that even though we're talking about historical figures, these are real people
Yes,
with ambitions, dreams, and ultimately very human vulnerabilities.
absolutely.
Right, and this brings us to another critical point. The socioeconomic conditions within Korea during this time.
Yeah,
Well, Queen Min and the political elite are trying to navigate these external pressures.
right.
There's a whole other story brewing within Korean society itself.
Absolutely.
We can't forget about the everyday people caught in the middle of all of this.
Yes.
What was life like for the average Korean during this era?
Well, by the late 19th century, Korea was facing some serious internal challenges.
Oh.
Decades of political instability had taken their toll.
Right.
The government was riddled with corruption, and the peasantry, who made up the vast majority of the population,
Yeah.
were very heavily burdened by taxes and just general exploitation.
Right, so you have this growing sense of unrest and resentment among the common people.
Absolutely. It's like the ground is rumbling beneath the surface,
Yeah.
waiting for something to trigger an eruption.
And that trigger comes in the form of the Donghak Peasant Revolution of 1894.
A very significant event.
Yeah, this wasn't just some random uprising.
No.
This was a symptom of Korea's deeper societal issues.
Exactly.
All these simmering tensions coming to a head.
A culmination of all these tensions.
So let's unpack this for our listener.
Okay.
What exactly was the Donghak movement?
Right.
And what sparked this revolution?
So Donghak, which means Eastern learning,
Okay.
was this new religious movement that was gaining a lot of traction, especially among the peasantry.
Mm-hmm.
It blended elements of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Korean shamanism.
Okay, interesting mix.
But it also had this very strong social justice element to it.
So it's a spiritual movement, but with these real-world concerns.
Exactly.
A potent mix.
A very potent mix.
So what was it about Donghak that resonated so strongly with the people at that time?
Well, imagine you're a peasant farmer.
Okay.
You're struggling to survive, you're being squeezed by taxes, and you see these corrupt officials living lavishly off your labor.
Right. It's not a good situation.
And then along comes this new religious movement
Yeah.
that not only offers you spiritual solace,
All right.
but also speaks to your very real earthly struggles.
Right. It's validating in a way.
Yeah, it's a message of hope and resistance.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
So it's almost like this spiritual and social awakening happening simultaneously.
Exactly.
What finally pushes things over the edge into open rebellion.
Well, in 1894, there's this incident involving a local magistrate in Jeolla province.
Okay.
He was accused of extortion and abusing his power.
Classic corruption.
Yeah, and the peasants, inspired by these Donghak teachings
Right.
and desperate for change,
Yeah.
they rise up in protest.
So it starts as this local protest against corruption, but quickly spirals into something much bigger.
Exactly. This local uprising spreads like wildfire throughout southern Korea.
Wow.
And suddenly, the Joseon government, already weakened by all these internal divisions,
All right.
finds itself facing a full-blown revolution.
Okay, so we've got a government in crisis,
Yeah.
a peasant revolution gaining momentum, and of course, China and Japan are still lurking in the shadows, waiting for their opportunity.
That's right. Always watching.
It sounds like things are about to get really explosive.
They are.
Okay, so we left off with Korea in a very precarious position. A full-blown peasant revolution, the Donghak Rebellion, is raging. And both China and Japan are watching very closely for a chance to intervene.
It's like waiting for a spark to ignite a powder keg.
Yeah, it really is.
And that spark comes pretty quickly.
Oh, so they don't wait long.
No, they see the Donghak Rebellion as their opportunity
Okay,
to assert themselves in Korea under the pretense of restoring order.
right. Always under the pretense of restoring order,
Of course.
coming in as the helpers.
Yeah, China claims they're acting at the request of the Korean government,
Okay.
while Japan uses the excuse of protecting their interests and citizens in Korea.
It all sounds very convenient, doesn't it? Like they were just waiting for an excuse to jump in.
Oh, absolutely.
But wasn't this a direct violation of the Tianjin Convention they signed back in 1885?
On paper, yes, but
Yeah.
both countries found ways to twist the situation to their advantage.
Right.
And this diplomatic maneuvering quickly escalates.
Okay.
And before you know it, we have the first Sino-Japanese War erupting.
Wow. So the Donghak Rebellion,
Yeah.
which started as a peasant uprising against
Oh.
corruption and injustice,
He's all right.
ends up triggering a war between these two major powers.
That's the irony of history sometimes.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant chain of events. What does this war mean for Korea, caught in the middle of it all?
Tragically, it further solidifies Korea's position as a pawn in a larger game. The war itself is a turning point in East Asian history.
Yeah.
Japan, with its modern military, defeats China decisively.
Wow, so they were much stronger.
Much stronger, it really shatters China's image as this dominant force in the region.
Right. They were kind of the top dog up until this point.
They were, and this leaves a power vacuum that Japan is all too eager to fill.
So Japan emerges as this new regional powerhouse.
Absolutely.
What happens to the Donghak rebels themselves?
Right.
Do they achieve any of their goals amidst all this chaos?
Sadly, no. Despite their early successes and widespread support,
Okay.
the Donghak Rebellion is ultimately crushed.
Oh, so they don't get what they're fighting for.
Not really. Some of their demands for reform are addressed,
Okay.
but it's mostly a way for the Korean government to try to regain control.
Okay, to kind of pacify the population.
exactly.
Kind of heartbreaking, a popular uprising
Yeah.
fueled by these genuine grievances,
Yeah.
fails to achieve lasting change, and becomes a catalyst for even more turmoil and foreign intervention.
It's a common theme throughout history, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like it.
But it is crucial to understand that the Donghak Peasant Revolution had a profound impact on Korea.
Okay.
It exposed the weaknesses of the Joseon dynasty, fueled anti-foreign sentiment,
Okay.
and further destabilized the Korean peninsula.
Right.
Ultimately, it sets the stage for Japan's growing dominance in the region,
Right.
which will have devastating consequences for Korea in the decades to come.
So we've gone from palace intrigue to coups, rebellions, and a war between two empires in just a few decades.
It's been a whirlwind.
It really has. This deep dive into late 19th century Korea has been a whirlwind of drama and tragedy, really highlighting how a nation trying to maintain its traditions gets caught in the riptide of these global power struggles.
It underscores that even seemingly isolated nations cannot escape these currents of global events.
Yeah.
And when those currents collide with internal divisions, the results can be dramatic and, as we've seen, often tragic.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredible journey through history.
It has.
We've uncovered palace conspiracies,
Right.
witnessed the struggle for modernization, and explored the devastating consequences of being caught in the crosshairs of empires.
Yes.
For our listener who has been exploring this period, what's the key takeaway? What should they remember from this deep dive?
I think the most important takeaway is that history is not just about dates and events.
Yeah.
It's about understanding this intricate web of forces, political, social, economic, and religious, that shape the world we live in.
Yeah.
Korea's story in the late 19th century really vividly illustrates this point.
Absolutely. Understanding this pivotal period is key to grasping Korea's tumultuous journey through the 20th century and beyond.
Yeah.
The echoes of those power struggles, the yearning for modernization, the fight for autonomy, they all resonate even today.
They do.
For anyone who's captivated by this era, I urge you to delve deeper into the stories of the individuals who lived through these turbulent times, the monarchs, the revolutionaries, the everyday people.
Absolutely. Their choices and actions shape the course of history. Right.
And their stories continue to fascinate and inspire.
That's a fantastic point. And what if the coups had succeeded? What if Korea had managed to navigate those treacherous waters and maintain its independence?
It's a great question.
These what-ifs are what make history so compelling
They do.
and remind us that it's a tapestry woven by countless individuals and their choices.
Exactly. History invites us to engage in these thought-provoking discussions.
Yeah.
To learn from the past and to gain a deeper understanding of the forces that have shaped our world.
Well said. A huge thank you to our listener for sending us down this fascinating path of Korean history.
Yeah, it's been a great deep dive.
It has been an enlightening journey. And for all of you listening, keep those deep dive requests coming. We'll be back next time to explore another captivating corner of history, unearthing hidden stories and connecting the dots in ways you might never have imagined.